Item 7 on consent agenda.
Good evening. We're going to begin our school board meeting. Thank you for everyone being here in attendance. And at this time, roll call.
Mr. Alexander.
Present.
Mrs. Baylor.
Here.
Mr. Bravo.
Present.
Mrs. Lasher.
Here.
Mrs. Mansfield.
Here.
Mr. Miller.
Here.
Reverend Walker.
Present.
And our student board representative from local community learning center, China Greer.
Here.
Thank you.
At this time, we will have our local CLC school board representative, China Greer, will lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you so very much. At this time, can we take a photo?
Sure. People probably want to say that, but
Oh, that's great.
usually.
Thank you. At this time, are there any community reflections?
Just a couple of things. Since our last meeting, was able to attend the school negotiations training that was put on by Couple and Wagner with Reverend Walker, Kathy, and Todd over there. Really good training, really enjoyed that. And I know Tim's been before, I think a few others. If you haven't gone, that is a really good one and it's pretty timely. Had the opportunity to also attend with several other board members, United Ways, meeting with some other elected officials as well as the school board and some of our staff to talk about efforts around early childhood education, which folds in nicely with the ad hoc committee that we created, and won't have much of a report, or won't have a report tonight, but will in coming weeks, just talk about kind of the groundwork on that. And just a side mention, there was a nice article in the New York Times on Sunday around, and the focus was primarily on child care, but also talking about the cost of child care and sort of how states are faring and relevant to what it costs for people to live anyway. And in some states, the annual cost of child care exceeds the cost of a year of in-state tuition at their colleges. And so just a really good article, it was an op-ed, but it was more advocating, of course, for universal child care, which, we're looking more at early childhood education, not just child care, but it was a timely article. Was able to attend with Mrs. Mansfield, the student board member orientation for our student representatives to the board, and China, of course, was there. And it was just a really well done. Miss Whitfield is around. Oh, there she is back there, and Miss McWilliams Woods and Carla Sibley. Just a fantastic opportunity to sit with all of our student board members and help orient them to how we operate as a board and what we do. And I mean, we barely scratched the surface, so I know they're in good hands though, and they'll have so much more to learn from that. This week, of course, we have lots of bands and choirs in the round, so I'm excited about that. I've got one or two we're doing. And then we have State of the City next week and State of the Schools the following week. It's getting busy.
Yes. Thank you. Next.
In addition to the pieces that Mr. Bravo mentioned, I had the great pleasure of being invited to Mason CLC for the kickoff to their Kindness Week. And we were in there bright and early on a Monday morning, and the students did not know we were coming. And there were folks from the community, there were some firefighters, there were some police officers. Shout out to The Well, which is the community group over there. They had several members there. Teachers, just community involved folks, several senior staff that are around. I saw some of them from way down the hall, some of them I got to talk to, some of them I didn't. were there, and we gave the kids high fives, just greeted them, told them how great they were and what a great school they went to. And some of them were so excited and enthusiastic. Some of them were like, dude, it's a Monday morning. And some were like, why are all these strange people trying to give me high fives? So it was an interesting comment, but it was so great to see all their personalities. And, I think that if as a board, if we could get to do that, like every couple of months, just give high fives to students, I think that it gave me more energy to get through last week than just about any coffee could do. So just a shout out to everyone who came out, and also to Angela Harper for her fantastic work. I got to know her when I was the Bookville cluster rep when she was at Krause, and I'm excited to be the East cluster rep and have her at Mason. She does fantastic work, and she loves the daylights out of her students. Let's see. The other thing that I would recommend, if board members get a chance to, or others that have been invited to the I Promise design team tours, if you've seen those pop up on your calendars, I actually took a young lady who everyone thought was my daughter, so I was very flattered. She's really cute, and she's my son's best friend, and she's going into early childhood education, and so she had asked to see the I Promise school, so I took her, and just seeing how far they've come and what they're learning and things that they're tweaking, let's just say, as they go. I think that it would be really great if you get a chance to hear some of those things. It is there for us to learn from, just like STEM was, and they're not just resting on the laurels of, well, we're the I Promise school. They're actually, walking the walk and changing things as they go. So kudos to Keith Lichty for all the work that he does as the liaison for that, and if you get a chance, go take it, because things are changing constantly. And I'll leave it at that for now.
Shine.
Hey, my name is Shani Greer. I'm a senior at Bookville CLC, and I'm here today to tell you what's going on at Bookville. The boys and girls basketball team both qualified for the Ohio Athletic Association Basketball District Tournament. Bookville's first ever robotic team participated in the first technical challenge competition at Kent State University. The team walked away with the judges' award of Most Consistent Performance, Innovative Design, and Best Strategy.
Nice.
Seniors at Bookville CLC have successfully passed the WorkKeys assessment. Students who successfully passed their assessment earn the WorkKeys National Career Readiness Certificate. WorkKeys is a valuable credential for students because it verifies the employer's workplace skills. To celebrate Black History Month, all teachers are participating in a door decorating contest. Teachers and students decide on the theme and decorate the classroom doors about the Black authors of Black history. Students get to judge the doors. Summa Health was named a College and Career Academy of Akron Integrated Partners of John R. Bookville CLC. Today, students, staff, and Summa Health employees participated in a planning day of the school year of 2019 and 2020. The meeting was held at the Summa Health Equity Center on Hawkins Avenue.
Thank you. Next.
Okay, I'm just going to say, Reverend and I attended Resnick today for the celebration of ribbon cutting of the UIB Elementary School. So it was very exciting. Reverend spoke. The children were so engaged. Firestone had their band ensemble there, so we were jamming. And speaking of high fives, Reverend got them started with that. So I had to continue. The kids were putting their hands out. They wanted to high five because of Reverend. But it was a very festive occasion. Very heartwarming, and the last time I was over at Resnick, I mean, it's so culturally diverse now. I was just like in awe to see the makeup of the students and how diverse it was. It was quite a surprise. It was a wonderful experience. The children were very engaged, and the principal, Tammy Brady, She was just wonderful, and the kids were so mannerly. I mean, there was so many of them in there. They were just so good. I was just like, I don't think I could have gotten them to participate and do all that the way that they did, but it was, they were very engaged in the entire process, and they sang the Judy Resnick song. I didn't even know there was a song. It was beautiful. Oh my gosh. And so appropriate, and I'm so glad they do have a song for her, for all that she represented. And the principal was talking about her and how she had a love to study space and all that. And then there was a parent there who had been working with the children over a period of years. I think she said she had been there 9 years. I mean, she almost brought me to tears, because she got there and this is her last year, helping with the children. And I was like, I'm so glad you sat down, because I would have been crying all over the place if you said 2 more words. So, but it's just good to know that people are really care about the children and want to be there to service them. Come to find out, one of our little choir members was one of the students that she knew, and he was a handful, I'll tell you. And I told her, I said, I knew something had happened. I said, you must have got a hold of him, because his whole demeanor changed at choir rehearsal, because he was something else. But after she had engaged with him and stuff like that, he calmed down and things like that. So I told her thank you. But it was really a very uplifting and a great occasion. And then I'm just excited about the school and them being the start of this in this way. And I think it's just so good. Reverend, you can continue. I don't know.
Next. I'll have some remarks later.
Just a couple things to add. Seeing a luncheon this morning was about youth leadership development, especially. There were 60 women in the room, all talking about how we can do more to empower the women and girls in our lives. Also, a major shout out to the PTA Founders Day and all the planning that went into that. It was a really cool event that a few of us got a chance to go to. And I think a highlight for me was hearing some of the individual stories that happen at buildings that we just don't hear about. Like, grandmother of a 3rd grader has come to help in the lunchroom every day, or almost every day, since her granddaughter was a kindergartner. And those kinds of stories that happen in every one of our buildings and deserve a lot of acknowledgement. The Boys and Girls Club also had their Youth of the Year awards on Saturday, and the 2nd place finalist was one of our students from Akron Early College. They did a fantastic job, each kind of speaking about their past, what they've gone through, what the clubs have meant to them. And then the last thing to mention, Friday morning I spent at Ellett, and it was fantastic. Ron Bouldry from the College and Careers Academy kind of gave me a tour and introduced me to a lot of the teachers that have been responsible for some of the College and Career Academy's work. Number one, they were fantastic. But I think it was really cool to see actually inside classrooms with kids in the classrooms, how they were thinking about it right now, what the future potentially looked like. And there was one of the teachers there whose name I forgot, but he is in the marketing world. And he was talking about how the kids actually run a store there where you can buy all kinds of different stuff. And they used the profits to sponsor 22 kids at the battered women's shelter over Christmas. And they got these cards that I was just like trying to hold back tears unsuccessfully of the things that the women were saying about how much this really touched them and how they never thought they'd have to spend Christmas here, and to know that there were people, let alone kids. And I said to the teacher, we gotta tell this story, we gotta celebrate it. He's like, no, that's the other lesson. You do this because you're a human. This is a lesson in humility too. It's not about sharing the story, it's about doing this because people need it. So it was really, really cool morning.
I had the opportunity a couple weeks ago, as I always do each year, to travel to Washington, D.C. This year I normally travel with either Mrs. Baylor or Mrs. Mansfield, who I enjoy. This year I was by myself, but then I wasn't by myself actually, because Carla Sidley was with me, and so she got a chance to actually participate and see what goes on as far as equity, which I was glad to see that since she's the head of the equity department here in Akron Public Schools. So it was good to see her there. There was a lot of good stuff that went on there. Carla and I talked back and forth. We ate lunch together a couple days, and there was a lot of good stuff that went on. But I'm just going to kind of go through a couple things. In the equity symposium, which was started first, there were a number of workshops, breakout sessions, but there were a couple things that really hit me the most. There was a Dr. Candace Summers. She's an instructional coach and restorative justice specialist in Boston Public Schools, and she talked about how segregated to this day that Boston Public Schools are, and talking about equity and all the work they have to do with their school district. It was eye-opening to me because I didn't think this still happens, but what she spoke about was really, really exciting. And then talking about all the kids, not just one kid on one side of the track or the kids on the other side of the track, but all the kids in general. And she was very dynamic, had a very good personality, can learn a lot from her. Again, like I said, there was other breakout sessions, and there was also another, one of my colleagues from CUBE spoke, and she spoke on, and it was very good in reference to personal biases, and the title of this session was Equity, Mindfulness, and Restorative Practice, Intersections and Opportunities, and she talked about the biases and talked about not just biases that kids may have and so forth, but the biases that we may have, the biases that teachers may have, the biases that all people have, and how that affects, sometimes knowingly and unknowingly, our kids, and when it comes to the classroom, when it comes to making decisions that we make. So that was very, very good session. I was proud of her. She's a professor at Morgan State University as well, so she brought a lot. And then there was a gentleman by the name of Charles Best. He's the founder and CEO of DonorsChoose.org, and we passed a policy on crowdfunding, and he spoke about crowdfunding. I would suggest that we all get a chance to kind of go and look on this side, because they do a lot of good things, and everything that they do is what we said we want to do. Is anything that comes to this district comes to the district, and it's district owned, and we do it all, so everyone knows what's happening, so it doesn't get individuals in trouble. Then we went on to the Advocacy Institute, and I'm not going to get too deep into that because it's a lot that was going on there, and Carla has a ton of notes she took as well. But there was one speaker that really, and he is now going to be a speaker at the National School Board Conference as well, and his name is Dr. Norman Ornstein, and he's American Enterprise at the American Enterprise Institute. He had some heavy things he had to say about education, and I think everybody in education could learn from it. He not just spoke on the aspect of schools, but he spoke on the aspect of government as well, and funding and things of that nature. And then there were a couple others, and he just really stood out. There were a number of others, but I'm going to go to the Day on the Hill. So we went on the Day on the Hill. We went to Capitol Hill, where we talked to our congressmen and women in reference to our concerns that we have in public education and support public education. And so I did get a chance to talk to our Congresswoman, Marcia Fudge, briefly, but of course it was so helter-skelter up there on the Capitol in Washington. They were running, and we were walking and talking for a moment. We started sitting, and then we ended up walking and talking because she was going from one meeting here to another meeting to another, go this vote to that vote. But we also got a chance to meet with Sarah Nasta, her counsel, a young lady who works for her. And this was different this year too. We also spoke, and she has an intern who is a teacher from Seattle and Seattle schools, and by the name of Katie McCain, and she is doing her internship via the Albert Einstein Fellowship Program, and so she's spending part of her school year in Washington in Congresswoman Marcia Fudge's office to see what goes on, to talk about education, to see things that are happening in Washington to deal with. So that was very, very neat. I got a chance to talk to her, and she had a lot of good input as well. And so I thought that was good for us in public education. And I want to thank Dr. McWilliam Woods and Mrs. Brady for, I always ask every time I go, what do we need to talk about in reference to Akron Public Schools? What do we want? What do we need? What do we want them to support us on? So we talked about IDEA funding, and they gave me several pages that were good. I shared to with Congresswoman, her individual people, and then I also got a chance to talk about other things we do in college and career. I got a chance to talk about the I Promise School, because everybody has questions in reference to I Promise School, because they think it's a charter. And it was, no, it's not a charter. It is Akron Public School. And so we got a chance to talk about a lot of things, but it was, I can keep going on and on and on. And I'm gonna stop right there, Reverend, because I don't want y'all going to sleep. But I think it was good. And David, thanks for sending Carla, because I think our administrators will be good to have administrators attend conferences and things like that, because you see things that are going on all over the country in public education, and how people are thinking as far as in Washington and education. And that throws in. Betsy DeVos was there as well, who spoke, and well, she didn't speak. She read a speech, and then she spoke about, or her speech was about no longer charter schools, but freedom. So we're talking about freedom schools. Now, I don't know what that meant, but freedom schools. So we can all take it from there, but public education is where it's at, so I'm staying here. So, thank you, Reverend Walker.
Yeah, something. I was out of the country visiting my daughter the last couple of weeks, that's why I wasn't at the last school board meeting. And I want to toot my horn about my daughter real quick. She's on a campus in Valencia, Spain, a place called Berkeley School of Musical Arts. And there's 4 master programs there, 160 total students, and there's also another Akron Public School graduate in one of the other classes there as well, young man, I can't remember his name off the top of my head now, graduated from Bookville CLC 4 years ago in a different program. And while I was there, my daughter also spoke of another Akron Public School student who was on that campus for a quick immersion program. I just want to point that out, just showing that out of 160 students who come from around the world to that campus for those programs, there are 3 Akron Public School student graduates in Valencia, Spain, right now as I speak.
Nice. Thank you. Nice. Very nice. Just wanted to highlight a number of things that we've done together as board members. Again, the early childhood education, and we'll hear more from move forward under his leadership in that area today, for those who are supportive of that. But I also attended the Ohio School Board's Black Caucus, where we had a meeting organizing the Black Caucus, and want to encourage, and China want to encourage you to take advantage of the Leo Lucas Scholarship. It's online. You can get in touch with your counselors. So it's online for any of our students, and we would hope as many of our students would take advantage of that, do the appropriate essays and other information that you need to submit, and all of that can be done online. The Leo Lucas Scholarship Fund. And then attended, Patrick said, the Pebble and Wagner School Negotiation Workshop, and also the Master Board Leadership Workshop. And out of that, we're going to ask that Sister Morgan, Miss Morgan, and Brother Alexander would comprise, dealing with policy, a evaluation for school board members, so we can begin to evaluate ourselves. We evaluate the superintendent, we evaluate the treasurer, but in my tenure, we've never had any form or any instrument where we can help to evaluate one another. So they'll be looking at that and bringing us information about that. And then Northeast Leadership Workshop, attended some of those as well. But also had the opportunity to attend the Bookville versus Kenmore Girls Basketball Championship. Bookville girls undefeated, but the Kenmore girls came out on top on Thursday evening. Very tight game, excellent atmosphere. Everybody did a wonderful job, and a very close game where people could have gotten heated, but they did an excellent job and represented Akron Public Schools well. And I know that because the last time I went to the championship, where unfortunately Kenmore played North, didn't turn out so well. We got a negative write-up in the paper because of things, and someone brought that to my attention and said, look how well our students are representing Akron Public Schools. And then on Friday night, the Bookto boys, who were undefeated, played the Elliott boys again, a nip and tuck game, championship game that could have gone either way. Again, everybody did an excellent job. Staff, teachers, all of our staff that works in a variety of ways to make sure the security is taken care of, our resource officers, all of those who work in our various departments did an excellent job making sure that everybody was secure, that everything went well, and a very tight-knit game. But again, Bookto won that game over Elliott. So I want to commend our students for doing an excellent job in their extracurricular activities, particularly basketball. And then to highlight, it was at Firestone, both games were at Firestone, and I think Firestone staff, the building, the surroundings, everything was conducive for an outstanding activity for both of those nights. So thank you. Thank everyone for assisting and doing a wonderful job and making sure that everything went well. Next, no request to address the board.
Correct.
And we have communications and recognitions. And before we go into the presentation, we want to continue our appreciation for board members. Last month, January, is Appreciation Month for school board members, and 2 of our school board members were not present at our last school board meeting. It's a certificate of appreciation for the All-Star Team, School Board Recognition Month, and so we'll continue to salute our school board members. Bruce Alexander. And Tim Miller. And also as a way to acknowledge your work and to just give you something tangible that you can place in your hands so that you can remember to know that you are appreciated. Each member of the board will have a framed picture that we took at the I Promise School, and we will distribute those this evening. There are extra pictures that we'll distribute as well, so you have an extra picture of yourself so that you can take. Mr. Miller?
Thank you very much. Yeah, we sure did.
Rob? Thanks, Bill. Well, Mark Williamson, thank you for causing division among us. Mine was a little different as well. But after the meeting, you can come and we'll have individual pictures that you can make sure you get before you leave this evening. So we want to thank the staff for making sure that that was done. We wanted to have, of course, all of us to be in a picture with Mr. LeBron James. And if that happens and come back again, we'll have the staff to come and take another picture if that ever occurs as a historic memento of what you do to make sure that the I Promise School and all of our other schools, as was noted tonight, continue to have an impact on our students in public education. So we thank you for your contributions individually and what we do collectively to make sure things happen. Thank you. At this time, Mr. Rambler is going to come and share a presentation on impacting behaviors and House Bill 318 and our PBS dealing with behavioral, positive behavioral intervention and supports.
Thank you very much. I passed out hand copies as well as kind of the presentation on the floor. So I'm going to be good with my time so I can enable some questions at the end. I want to talk about House Bill 318, which is something that we've talked about over the past year. Andrew Zaccardi and I did a presentation with the elementary principals because it impacts them quite a bit. We've got to make some adjustments over the next few years, which I'll point out as well. But so we want to kind of highlight that. Additionally, there's a few items I want to make sure that our batteries work. So this falls under, of course, the rigorous teaching and learning and also safe learning environments. But also can also tie into the public engagement as well, especially as we look at having different people in our buildings like mentors and such as well. I want to make sure that we go over House Bill 318 both from the discipline side of it, but also the PBIS linkage. And I tried to be really good to make sure that we didn't have a lot of acronyms. Ellen helped me identify some of those because I know we over acronym everything in education and like everything government. So we want to make sure that you also understand the positive behavior intervention services and supports a little bit, and then identify some current practices that we have pre-K to 3, and that's really where we're focusing with House Bill 318 is pre-K to 3rd grade. Identify some of the codes that are involved, and then also a perspective of how do we impact behaviors. Although the change with House Bill 318 is really limiting suspensions and expulsions, our goal is not just to limit suspensions and expulsions, it's really how do we change behavior without relying on suspensions and expulsions. That's really the answer. So just a little overview of PBIS. The idea of that, and it can be kind of a cumbersome topic at times, and it's sometimes hard to define, but an easy way to think of it is just what Reverend Walker was talking about with the basketball game, which I thought was a really good point. So one of the things that we do both educationally but also like the Bookdale Outlet Championship game is we put in the structure to ensure that people would meet our expectations. We made sure that we had staff in all the areas where we could be concerned about. We made sure that people understood our expectation as they were coming into the game. And then if people did not, that we addressed it in the moment and then tried to reteach the expected behavior we were looking for, which really is what PBIS is all about. It's a framework. Sometimes, and it's statewide, nationally wide, people say that you need to do PBIS. PBIS is not something you just do. It's a framework. It's a way that you do things within your classroom, within your building. So that's one of the parts to think about because a lot of the things we do in Akron Public Schools fits within the framework of positive behavior interventions and supports. The other thing that people often think is that PBIS is just rewarding the right behavior. It's not that either. It's actually giving people expectations. When they do what they're expected to, there is a positive to that. And then there's also a consequence when they don't do what they're expected to. But the important other part is that you teach what you're expecting to have happen. And that's sometimes the thing that we need to really make sure we focus on. As parents, we do that all the time. If you come home late and you're supposed to be home at a certain time, you probably have a consequence for coming home late, but you probably have a conversation about how you're supposed to come home late and why if you don't come home late, what's going to happen and what are the issues. So that's kind of like just the overview of PBIS. The other part that's important for our school resource officers, another part is House Bill 318 also well-defined the school resource officer and also the training that goes in with the school resource officers Fortunately for us, there's really nothing we have to change to do that because those are things we have been doing in the district. We have a great relationship with the city. The superintendent and all of you on the school board have done a phenomenal job working with the city to enable us to have a really good resource through the police department and enable us to pick the right school resource officers for the district. So the discipline changes as this is impacted, and also I'll make sure that Marilyn gives you access to the slides because there's some of this that I'm just going to hit on, but I want you to be able to access if you have more questions too. So this year is the baseline year. This year every school district is establishing their baseline mark of what they need to reduce to. So as you can see, next year we have to reduce by 25%, the year after by 50%, and then 21, 22, 100%. So the intent of the law is that we are no longer suspending and expelling pre-K to third grade students, which as a human being that makes a lot of sense. Like those are little kids. Suspending them out of school is probably not impacting the behavior. There are extremes which the law enables you to still use suspensions and expulsions, and I'll highlight that a little bit, but logically that makes sense. We should be more giving a consequence, but also reteaching the expectation. The challenge to that is we do have kids that are in those grades that sometimes do things they're not supposed to. We still have to have consequences. We still have to have expectations, and if they don't follow them, then what do we do? Which is the part that Mary and I and the district as a whole and the elementary principals really need to devise what are those things, but it needs to be building by building, not just a cookie cutter approach, because all of our buildings are unique to that. So when we shared this with principals, sometimes when I share discipline data, I feel like I'm saying the things that are not going well, and I really wanted people to look at what is going well. So we took some numbers in January, and we have 28 buildings, 6,168 students. Out of school suspensions, there were 517 incidents. That's 8% of the pre-K to third grade kids. That means 92% of our pre-K to third grade kids were never suspended, which I know for a number of years we've been sharing how many kids in the district don't get suspended versus how many do, and it usually is in that 85% range year in and year out. 92%. So clearly we're doing some really good stuff with 92% of our kids that are enabling us to utilize expectations, reasonable consequences that change behavior that don't lead to out-of-school suspensions. So instead of looking at, we're really not doing enough for the 8%, let's look at what we're doing for the 92% and how do we add that to the 8%. That's really the question I think we should look at, because we are doing a really good job. There's just another small percentage we have to do a little bit more for. In the PBIS world, there's also this statistic that is often used, and we look at and the numbers can be used different ways, but essentially you look at in the world, in kids everywhere, 85% of the people are going to do what they're supposed to do. And that's not just kids in a classroom, but it's in the world too. It's a very common statistic. It's the 15% that you have to work with. The 15% is really divided by 10 and 5. 10% are going to go back and forth. Sometimes you'll do the right thing, sometimes you won't. 5% are the 5% you're spending a lot of your time with. That's the same thing. And this actually bears out pretty closely to this statistic that we found. So one of the things we talked about with the elementary principals is really keying in on what are we doing right in your building for the 92%, and what do we need to do to increase that for the 8%. So one of the things also is, because we're going to have to eliminate suspensions and expulsions, there's a bunch of codes that are going to be exceptions now. So you can still, there's exclusions to this bill, and it's if there is serious bodily injury, if there's a significant concern for the health and safety of others in the building, are the real exceptions to that bill. But it also eliminates suspensions for a lot of the codes just based on the codes themselves are no longer suspendable. It again means that we need to do something though. We can't just say, don't suspend. That's not the answer. There's got to be something we're doing to impact behavior. And this is where I divide up the other codes that are suspendable, but just the different questions you have to ask. So if somebody's going to be charged criminally for a code, and those are the codes that we kind of looked at connect to that, then that is still a suspendable code. If you're protecting the safety of other students, there's a few that are there, and then serious bodily injury. Those exceptions, though, are the intent of the law is to stop suspending and expelling pre-K to third grade kids. We're not trying to play around and create exceptions. There's a very clear purpose of what that bill is. So it's going to be challenging as a school district and every school district in the state to meet this, and we're going to all have to work really hard to do that as well. I just gave you a PBIS fact sheet, and I'm not going to go over all this. It's just some more detail for you guys to be able to read just to better understand it. And like I said, PBIS is often misunderstood, and I just wanted to try to give you some more information to clarify it. And then this is that pyramid that I was talking about. This pyramid uses the 80-15-5%. I say this all the time. This is not just kids. This is human behavior. Human behavior is 80% of people who do what they're expected to do over and over again. We absolutely see it in kids. The challenge is, how do you work with the 15 and 5%? What we identify with our pre-K to third grade is really, how do we work with that 8%? How do we replicate what we're doing so good with the 92% with that 8%? A couple other just overviews for PBIS. It's really focused on teaching behaviors, teaching expectations. You know, you think about with your own kids, you have the rules that you give them, the expectations they are to follow. It's the same with adults. When we come into senior staff, there's an expectation of what we're supposed to do. You meet the expectation, or David yells at you later. And none of us want to get that, so we do it. But it's the same idea. It also names goals and identifies features. This is something I want to throw in here, is that it's not just stuff. There's a lot of things that classroom teachers do all the time, every day, that fits into a PBIS framework. But a good one to think about that you all know a little bit about is PACS. The PACS program is absolutely a PBIS program, and it works on teaching behaviors, enabling kids to hold themselves accountable, and the teachers to hold themselves accountable. And that's a really good tool that I think we've bore out for a few years, and hopefully we can continue to involve that in our pre-K to third grade classrooms, because I think that's a really strong one. It was also a way, it was actually originally developed to work with special ed kids and kids with disabilities, but it actually works really well with all kids as well. And then I just identified a few different things here that we do use that already works within the PBIS framework, and there's some of those different items that you're familiar with at the top. I think as we keep moving, keep looking at having PACs in more pre-K to third grade classrooms, I think is wonderful. If you've been out to the preschool programs, you'll see the sign that they have, that they are actually by the state deemed as an award-winning PBIS program. They're really good at this. They're really good at collecting data. And that's the other part of PBIS, is collecting data and then using the data to make decisions that I know we all agree is really good to do as well. And then it's, this last point I think is really important, is in allowing the teams in the buildings to make the decisions, not just for us downtown to make decisions, but actually those leadership teams in the buildings through a PBIS program to do that. And then the rest of this is all for you later, because I didn't want to give you too many things all at once, and I wanted you to have other stuff, so I'm not going to go on. I put this slide in there to make sure I stopped myself. Okay. Anything I may answer?
Questions? Yeah. Yes.
Thank you, Mr. Rambler. A couple quick questions. On the slide where you go back to, if you could go back, where you have the numbers and the reductions that are required.
Yes.
So, just a quick question on that. And I've not read through House Bill 318 yet, I will now. The reductions that are required, reductions in number of incidents or reduction in number of students that are subject to out-of-school suspension or expulsion?
It's incidents, it's total incidents. So like, if it were Mr. Bravo got suspended 5 times, that would count 5 different times. So it's the truest way to measure it.
Okay, so we have to reduce our 517 by 25% down to like the 387, 388. That's
Correct.
the number that you're working with, not just the number of students. Okay.
Correct.
Then, how closely are we working, I guess, with our staff and our teachers and that, just to keep them in the conversation and know what's coming as far as what changes to the code are going to be made and that sort of thing?
Well, it's been something, I think initially so far what we've done is shared all the information, but the moving forward, actually, what are we doing work-wise, part that the people in the places need to do those decisions. Like, that's not for me to decide that. I think part of the conversation, but it's the buildings, like the people in the buildings need to do that.
And then the last question I have, sorry, is the professional development around the PBIS. Will a lot of that come from the expansion of some of the programs that we already have, or are we also benefiting from the fact that we have someone on staff who has a lot of experience in PBIS? Like, where's all of that curriculum and training coming from?
Well, and I think that's a good thing to think about us, and we've talked, I know, about using the state support team as well, because they have like statewide PBIS trainers. So as opposed to us trying to do it, like these are people that go district to district and do this work and work with the teams in the buildings to then create the movement from there. But some of it, I think, is the other side, is we do have things that buildings are doing right now that fit into this. And it's just continuing to enhance that and then enabling the other buildings to see what each other are doing too. Because some of those strategies will work well in other places too. So I think it's a combination. But absolutely, it's something Ellen and I have talked about, looking at even our data system. Is there a way that we can enable that to work for us to be able to have teachers be able to put incidents in there, and then maybe the buildings as a team look at those incidents? Are they happening in one place? Are they the same kinds of behaviors? Do we need to reteach how do you walk in a hallway then? But enabling, the more that we can give the information to the people there and it's real data, the better they can make better decisions with it, I think is a key.
And I like hearing the link between student services and curriculum and instruction and just how those two are coming together in this instance. Thank you.
The biggest part about PBIS is really, it's about teaching. It's really about teaching kids the expectations, and then we mess up. How many have got on a speeding ticket and you needed to be re-taught? You got a consequence, but you had to relearn. I'm only supposed to go 20 in the school zone. And then you do it now. But it's the same concept.
Yes.
So I recently posted an article actually this week for work that stated, it was from NBC News, and it stated that 50,000 students nationwide are expelled in preschool. So this is not, just to point out, this is not an Akron Public School issue. This is not an urban school issue. This is a national issue. So I guess one of the things that you mentioned, the statewide trainers. As a board, part of our job is to help you get all the resources into the buildings that you need, right? So what I'm looking at is how do we best support these teachers? Do we have enough counselors, mental health providers, things like that? Because in my opinion, and this is just, I made a quick list, there are a couple things that make you have that day where you break a rule, right? I mean, some people go in and they're just going to break a rule. It's just going to happen. Sometimes you break a rule just because you're human, right? Sometimes there's an underlying mental illness. sometimes you have a special need and maybe it's a communication issue, so you throw a tantrum that you might not have thrown should you've been able to communicate better. Sometimes you're a trauma victim and something triggers you, and so that's a lot for a teacher in a classroom with, 25 to 30-ish little people running around, even with all the supports that we try to put in. I guess my question is, what else could we do? Do you need from us, or are you going to be giving us those lists?
I think you just gave us the list.
Okay.
Just did it. But it's the part, teaching is hard. And teaching in an area where there's high poverty is even harder. And, one of the things I think we need to do for everybody in the district is to really understand behaviors and really understand how to build relationships with kids that maybe don't want relationships, and how do you impact those behaviors. But I would say you mentioned that, but that's a key. The other part you were mentioning is, it reminds me of the flat tire idea. If anyone's ever gotten a flat tire and you went out to your car at the beginning of the day and you go to your car and you go start it up and you see you have a flat tire, totally screws up your whole day, because you get to work late, you feel bad that you're late, you're irritated about the tire, you had to wait for somebody to come change it, or you changed it yourself and you're irritated about that. You get to work, you're still frustrated about it, you can't go to lunch when you're going to go to lunch to go meet the other person for lunch, and you're still frustrated about it. It's just bad all day, the whole day. You make bad decisions because you're angry. You go home and you're still probably a little bit mad when you get home about it too. Some of our kids have a flat tire every single day when they go to school, and it's just the way it is. How do we help them with that? Because it's what you said, some of them are going through trauma, whether it's significant or whether it's not as significant, but it makes every other choice throughout your day not the best choice. And we as adults do it. What about pre-K to third grade kids, and you're talking about 5 to 8, 9 years old? So that, I agree with you, and that's where the mental health and the other supports that come in too. But I do think a large area is helping our teachers to really understand behaviors and then how to respond to them, which is a challenge. And it's a challenge for everybody. It's not a negative towards staff in any way. That is a hard thing to do.
It's really pertains a little bit what Lisa's saying, and I guess we're going a little deeper. When we're dealing with the kids who are having these maybe mental health problems or trauma informed, and this probably David you guys might have to answer this here. What is the training that we're giving our teachers to help be able to identify possibly some of these things, so they can, these issues or problems with mental health or trauma, so they can be able to see that, hey, this kid has a mental health problem, or this could be a trigger to trigger something to go on that causes this behavior, so that those kids don't get pushed out and get labeled, because some of those kids are really smart kids. It's just, if you have some trauma, and I mean, probably all of us in here have had some type of trauma, and we probably still, to this day, something triggers that, and we can kind of act a certain way, or we can act another way. Sometimes we've learned to deal with it in a different way. But I just want to know, what are we doing? Because I'm always concerned, teachers have a tough job, and they do a lot of good work, but I also want to make sure they're prepared to deal with kids like that. So I just want to know what the training is.
So on Friday, I sat in this room with a representative from Panorama. We piloted a climate survey in North Hill with Jennings, Findlay, Forest Hill, and Harris Jackson. ODE was piloting this survey a couple of years ago, and so I decided to continue it, and I think that's a good place to start. So what Panorama told us is, for the younger kids, that instead of having them, answer questions with a multiple choice, they could use icons that can show how do they feel about certain things. And I think that's one place, a good place to start, because, a lot of times we might look at, a particular kid, but we also need to understand the climate in that building and how the kids view, as customers of ours, how do they view their education? I think that's one place to start. The nice thing about Panorama is it can compare our data to other urban schools statewide and nationally, and do those benchmarks. And so I know Bass worked with ODE, and our district was part of a pilot, which is why we did that with it was actually with Jennings first, and I extended it to the other elementaries in the cluster. So that's one part. And then, Tammy and Dan, we offer a variety of training options for our teachers, some of with our 6-hour options. There's the PACS Good Behavior game, which has some support from the ADM board and from our local Summit County ESC and the ESC of Northeast Ohio. And so there's a lot more work that we have to do. Carla getting involved with some of our social emotional work and trauma-informed practices, and the state is actually providing a lot of that support as well, particularly with the new state strategic plan for education. So all of these things are all coming together at the same time, and I'm hopeful of some grants that we might be pursuing to help provide some of those resources to our staff on how to deal with kids. Again, some kids who have some serious problems, and one kid can disrupt a whole instructional day in a school, and we know that. And looking at our own alternative programs and how can those be improved so they can better meet the needs of the students. So all those things are on the table, but it's really going to be up to you helping inform where we go with your work on board policy. And that is right, in your corner to help us understand which direction you want to go.
Right. I think that all staff need to have, maybe there's some mandatory training that you have for them to understand trauma-informed mental health and things of that nature. But I just think that we got to make sure we equip those teachers, because they're the ones in the trenches who are right down there, and they're working with these kids directly, and they need to make sure they have some tools that they can do it. But at the same time, they have to also want to learn it, and then go there and learn it, and then be able, what can they take from that so they can use it to make their classroom better, so it's an easier environment for them to learn. So yeah, I'm always thinking about training. I'm kind of big on training because I think it works really, really well, because if you don't, as a sports analogy, if I'm a football player, I don't have the equipment to go out there and play. I can't play the game too well, so I got to have the equipment and able to go out there to play that game so we can win, so that we can do that. All right, thank you.
Just to add to what David was saying, Children's Hospital has Melissa McLean is her name, and the buildings have been using that a lot in the past 3 years. I know through Carla and Andrew, they've been linking her up to buildings, which she does a good training on trauma, but also then how do you interact with people that are going through trauma. And David mentioned the other one with the ADM board, because they sponsored a lot of the PACS programming initially, and then when we got the state grant for school safety, we actually used part of that money to do more PACS programming, because PACS actually shows a lot of long-term benefits to reduce kids making bad decisions, kids being violent, kids using drugs, kids drinking. So David was absolutely right in pointing out that we are incredibly fortunate because we have a lot of community involvement, and the ADM board was absolutely a huge part of the PACS program starting with us.
Well, can I just give a shout out for that too? If you see that, there's a PACS training day that's on the board's calendar. So if that's too much, I don't know that I can do a whole day, but I did get to go out and see a classroom where it was implemented, and I'll tell you what, just watching those, the most impactful for me was watching them walk through the halls, and the difference in a class that is playing the PACS game and watching them get ready to go out in the hall, to go through the hall, to go to the restroom, compared to even just classic, really good classroom management it was amazing to me to watch.
And when you realize what it really is, it's a simple thing, but kids are willing to fall into the expectation with really simple things. And the greatest part of that is kids monitor their own behavior in that. It's not even the staff that have to do it. And Lisa's right, David Hill did it in their lunchroom. It's phenomenal. Like elementary lunch, if you ever go to it, is hard. And I was totally impressed at how well they do it. So.
Self-regulation.
one, I really appreciate the conversation because I think there's a lot of districts that could look at this and say, cool, we can cut that by just stopping suspensions, and then you still leave teachers with this things happening in their classrooms. So one, I think that's fantastic, but it also feels like in addition to policy and training and systems, it's a funding question too. Like we have shifting priorities to be sure that our buildings and our teachers are well funded to have the other supports that they need inside the building. And also just a quick in the weeds question maybe, but since this is a baseline year, the non-suspendable codes now, are they not suspendable in our district right now? Or that will be next year after the baseline?
Next year is when we have to start the reduction. So there's no like penalty of force reduction this year.
Gotcha.
But,
and are we still suspending those codes that will be non-suspendable
yes.
next year?
Yes.
Gotcha.
And it's one of the things that you made the point of, and I think we always keep trying to make that point. It's not just saying don't suspend kids. You still have to give consequences to kids. You still need to teach behaviors. That is not going to go away. It's just to what degree do you do it? And suspending and expelling is not going to be the way eventually. But I think it's what you all and David have done and the district has done over the years, and I've run that data year in and year out, is we've had a good decline in suspensions and expulsions, but nowhere ever have we said just don't suspend kids, let it happen. We've tried to build interventions, we've tried to build alternative programs, we've tried to include more mental health, more trauma training, because that's never going to be the answer. We need to reteach behaviors and expectations, not just look the other way.
Just have a question regarding the PBIS teams you talked about in each building. So we have 28 buildings. And are those committees started now? Or are we just now, looking at it, pointing towards the September or August? And what's the workflow here?
I'm sorry, I was trying to go back to the building number, but the,
28.
there it was. No, Senator Lehner, what she did here actually with the PBIS part is she re-mandated something that's already mandated. PBIS is mandated in the state of Ohio already, so she just mandated it again. So no, we have teams. Every year we have to do the restraint seclusion data, and part of that is establishing how each building does PBIS and what level are they at. The thing I would say as a district, we need to enable building PBIS teams to have more data, more opportunity to identify the things they need to do, and then enable them to do it. But that's not unique to Akron. That's every district. PBIS is really challenging. You really have to work together as a team within that building to identify the challenges and then what are the changes you're going to make. But I think we're fortunate because we can utilize the state support team to help us a lot, along with Carla and Andrew with school climate, and really every facet of the district. So no, it's not something we're just doing. They're already doing it. It's just helping them be able to do a little bit more. And then what are the other things we need to add to help them do it even better?
Okay, so to drill down, you talked about statistics. These statistics here, if we drill down, so 28 buildings, 517 incidents. I can't imagine it's 517 divided by 28 the same amount in every building. So we already know buildings that are maybe doing it better than others. So we're going to hopefully share that information better.
Yes, and I try to never share discipline data and isolate it by buildings because I don't want to create arguments between but absolutely, much like our kids are going to be on various tiers of the PBIS, and maybe it's a kid that's just in tier 1, but then there's some kids that are going to move up to tier 2 like me, but then there are other kids that are going to be at tier 3, and kids float back and forth. Buildings are the same. We're going to have to identify buildings that they need more support from the district because they maybe are a tier 2 building that needs more help, or maybe they just have more kids that are misbehaving too. But absolutely, that goes back to as a district, it's not a cookie cutter answer. It's a building by building, enabling those teams within the buildings to make those decisions.
Thank you. Any other questions? Yeah.
I just want to make one comment, and I'm glad that Mrs. Mansfield brought up the numbers. because I don't know the numbers offhand, but I mean, most of you know that I'm on the Child Guidance Board, Child Guidance and Family Solutions, and we talk a lot about this because we also have, and we know, and I didn't have the numbers, but anecdotally, we know that the highest rate of suspension and expulsion for kids is in preschool. And so Child Guidance runs its TAPS program, which is Toddlers and Preschoolers Succeeding, and it's an evidence-based program, and also receives a lot of support from the community, like GAR and those. So I'm assuming, are we also open then? Are we looking at other programs or other evidence-based practices that are out there to expand maybe what we have to drive that number down even more and even earlier, and partnering with agencies or organizations like that who already do that?
Yeah, I would say absolutely. It's a community effort, not just us effort, and I would say absolutely, but Helen would say.
Yeah, he kept looking at me, so I thought I better. So yes, and I think this is a perfect segue, and I know Mrs. Mansfield is going to mention this, but part of this discussion gets into this whole notion of the wraparound supports and the family resource centers that we're building in this city with the help of United Way and GAR and SEI and all of our great partners. In that Family Resource Center that we'll be piloting in Brooksville and East, this is the perfect discussion of how do we get additional supports, and any agency that touches a building, how do we coordinate those services? So it's not just an individual service to a family, but we're coordinating across agencies to make sure that all of that wraparound happens. And that's the support for the family, but that's also information for the staff. A big part of this work is to make sure that we absolutely have to train our teachers on the red flags for mental health issues. And we've got some great programs that our counselors use with our staff. But we also have to find ways to bring in all these additional supports. Our teachers, can't handle everything. There's great programs for classroom management. There's great programs for positive behavior supports the whole culture. But to get at deep-rooted issues, we've got to have the mental health agencies like Child Guidance, Minority Behavioral Health, Red Oak, who are experts at this. But we've got to coordinate those services better through the wraparound type supports. And they all come with programs that we can have them come in and provide the program with our staff or with our students. So that's important. I have 8 other things that I could tell you about. I was starting to write them down, but I'll do it another time because I know Reverend Walker wants to move on. But a lot of it is coordinating services and looking at what we already have. I do want to mention that we have a behavior committee in every single building that is in our collective bargaining agreement, and that is a team that looks at the behavior and discipline within each school. And we also have an advisory right now with Pat Scheib and Michael, that's meeting tomorrow, on student behavior to look at what else we can be doing in partnership with ADA around the issues, and we haven't talked about this yet as a brand new law, but to look at what we can do collaboratively with our teacher partners as well.
Right. Any other comments? Since I was told to move on. I do tend to run along. I do want to highlight, Mr. Alexander had mentioned being at the equity and advocacy. I was at the equity portion, and I brought back at the last meeting a book that was written by a young lady talking about trauma, but not trauma on the student, but trauma on the teacher. And teachers bring trauma into the classroom. How to be able to deal with those things so that they recognize the trauma that they're having, so it's not impacted upon the students that they're teaching. So it's a two-way street. We've got the children, we've got the teachers, we've got staff, all of those things impacting upon the learning environment. So I think we as we work on this, we've got to make sure we work on the other end, which is helping our teachers too.
And with that, I just have to say that when you were talking about it, I was thinking that if the teachers, are taught on trauma for themselves and get to see it for themselves, then they can readily recognize and, and empathize with students, because they have found their own traumas and in their own lives and things like that, so that they don't pass it along to other people, because we do too. We act out of different things that are still embedded in our psyche and things like that. Sometimes different things trigger it. We may not be aware of it, but if it happens a number of times, then you ought to identify that something's obviously out of whack here. I need to deal with this and get it together, and so I can move on. So just those kind of things, like if a person is really dealing with themselves, they can readily recognize it in the students and things like that.
Very good, thank you. Due to technical difficulties, the minutes are not completed yet and will be approved at the next board meeting. So we'll move on now to superintendent's recommendations.
Mr. President, I have before me for your consideration 26 personnel recommendations. These recommendations are in proper form, and I move their approval.
So moved.
It's been properly moved and seconded. Are there any questions or comments at this time? Hearing none, roll call.
Mrs. Baylor?
Yes.
Mr. Bravo?
Yes.
Mrs. Lasher?
Yes, just abstaining from item number 5, please.
Thank you. Mrs. Mansfield?
Yes.
Mr. Miller?
Yes.
Reverend Walker?
Yes.
Mr. Alexander?
Next, Mr. President, I have before me for your consideration 3 motions and 5 resolutions on the consent agenda. And before a motion is made, I'd like Mr. John Peterson from GPD Group to review the program of requirements submission and schematic design submission for the Kenmore Garfield Community Learning Center.
Thank you, Mr. James. Yeah, John Peterson with GPD Group, the project manager for the new Kenmore Garfield CLC project. We've been diligently working on the design of the building. I'd like to present that here this evening. We've had in the past year numerous meetings with the school staff, administrators, curriculum to develop the program for the building. Which I'll be able to run through the floor plans here briefly in a moment. Also, we're been having core team meetings with GPD, APS, our construction manager, Hammond Construction, as well as owner agent G. Stevens, twice monthly to kind of keep on task, develop the design, get feedback, recoup, and then generate more development in the design. Here is the site plan on the current Garfield High School site, which we're in the process of working on the developing the demolition documents and the early site package. Here the site plan. This is the building footprint of the that's proposed for the new CLC. We are a 3-story building of just over 260,000 square feet. By comparison, the existing building is approximately 180,000 square feet, so a considerable increase in the square footage. We have a main entrance drive coming off of Archwood, aligned with Lilly, which will have a long sweeping drive through the site by the main entrance, which is located here, exiting onto Brown. So there's 2 lanes through here, so we have all this stacking for arrival and dismissal with a bypass lane. We have all our parking to the north and to the east, with a service area to the south accessed off of Firestone, North Firestone. We will also have an entrance point from Brown, which will allow a quick right turn into this part of the parking lot. In development of the site plan, one of our challenges was to try to get all the parking contiguous on site, so you're not having to, you're not able to find a space and during a athletic event have to get off site and back on site elsewhere. It's all contiguous on site here. We have just over 370 parking spaces shown here. We will have a 3-story wing here, which will have a central courtyard, so all the classrooms, all the educational spaces will have exterior windows to allow that natural light into the spaces to help with that. As we know, having natural light and views is certainly beneficial. Here our service area, which will have direct access for the machining program as well as the construction trades program. Here we have these dark areas. There will be some bioretention basins, just shallow depressions for our stormwater to naturally filter the parking lot runoff and to help to detain some before it leaves our site. One of the other challenges here is the site slopes about 26 feet from corner to corner here, so we've got a little bit of, there'll be some grading, step down along the Archwood and Brown, as well as a bit of an embankment as we approach Beardsley and Firestone. So that's the site layout for the building. And I'd like to go through the floor plans. This is where getting all the feedback and comments from all the staff and the curriculum really helped to develop this program, develop the needs, the space adjacencies within the building. Here we have our main entrance lobby, which I'll show the renderings here in a moment. We have a lot of glass on 3 sides, a lot of natural light into the lobby with our security vestibule into our main office area to the left. To the right, we have our LRC Media Center space. As we pass on down this nice wide corridor, to the left here, we have our student dining commons, kind of a central hub to the building. Here we have our auditorium stage with our back of house spaces, seating for about 714, with the space here that can be utilized as kind of a pre-function space for theater events. Also, we have all this area here is our athletics wing, which will have our main gymnasium, auxiliary gym, support spaces with the wrestling, the weight training, and all our locker rooms and training and athletic offices. Main gymnasium, seating for approximately 1,400 spectators, about 200 in the auxiliary gym. If we run through the building here, we have our Project Lead the Way program, our advanced manufacturing. These are our music spaces, our construction trades, our main kitchen, our mechanical spaces with the delivery area and outdoor equipment enclosure. Again, the student dining commons, kind of the central hub here that can be utilized for pre-function here, as well as we have some tournaments, what have you, and for athletics that we have areas for teams to be able to be during those events. Here we have our 3-story academic wing with that central courtyard. We have our marketing program with our school store located right here, right adjacent to the dining, right along the pathway going to all the academic areas. Here we have our junior ROTC program. These spaces are multiple handicap spaces. All these rooms here are classrooms. And if you'll notice in this floor, and as well as our upper floors, we have pods of classrooms together with a extended learning area outside them for student collaboration just immediately off the hallway, but part of these positive classrooms. Also, we have the restaurant culinary arts program located here, which will have its own entrance to the exterior. That was another request, was to have that program immediately accessible, as we were seeing a lot of patrons for the restaurant program. And then running up to the second floor, we have another office area here for our, this would be our Health and Human Services. I didn't mention here, this would be another office here, which would be our freshman academy, as well as the mental health offices. We have our special ed rooms with resource rooms and now classrooms. We have our nursing program located here. Again, we have more pods of classrooms with extended learning areas for collaboration located here. We have our business logistics, infotech, integrated software, and CPI spaces, as well as the environmental and energy program. This is just kind of the upper areas of our large boxes. There'll be some mechanical spaces and what have you above some of those. One thing else I didn't mention is the upper lobby here, which will be like a 2.5-story space, which will have a lot of glass to the side, and then there's a stair that goes up to a kind of a bridge that will be able to look down into the lobby space, as well as into towards the student dining. And then third floor, again, more classrooms in the courtyard with a lot of natural light in the spaces. Another office upstairs, which would be like the emerging technology pathways, as well as the art spaces here, more classrooms with collaboration space, and then our life skills cooking labs. And then on the upper floor, that's where we have all our sciences. We have 8 science rooms. 2 chemistry, 5 bio, and 1 physics. Now let me show you what kind of the development of the building renderings. Make sure we get the right one first here. This is kind of a view of basically right from the corner of Archwood and Brown, looking towards the southwest. This is kind of the fruits of all these core meetings that we've had over the past several months, that we have quite a few different options put together, and we're able to narrow it down to one option to further develop it, and we've been continuing to develop here. What we have is the 3-story academic wing, kind of punched windows for all the classrooms. Some predominantly red blended brick for the exterior, some buff and orange brick with some accents, and some of the other spaces with some banding. The main entry, we have some brick piers with some nice brick detailing. Some up and down light fixtures, a lot of glass, the aluminum curtain walls. Everything's kind of a anodized aluminum type color, very efficient cost-wise, and gives a nice high-tech look. We have some metal panels that would flank either side of the lobby with a kind of a projected overhang at the roof level. Have some projected canopy at the entrance for affording protection. To the left here, we have the office area, which will have a lot of windows looking towards the drop-off area, good visibility for the staff. And then to the left here is our media center. A nice high volume for a good portion of it, and then kind of steps down to some smaller spaces. Here you're seeing the kind of the side of the auditorium. And this kind of wraps around the side here. You're seeing the main gymnasium. And then kind of wrapping around the corner here as we are looking along Brown Street is the side view of the three-story academic wing. Again, continue the theme of the punched windows, the red brick, the accent banding. This is where the classrooms kind of project out, where we have the extended learning areas. Some more aluminum curtain wall framing, and some kind of punched openings towards the bottom. A lot of cast stone sills, cast stone accent banding. And then as we wrap around along Archwood, here we'd be kind of entering over the site here towards the main gymnasium, which would have kind of a similar motif as we have at the main entry, kind of help tie things together with the buff orange brick piers with some relief in the detailing, some cast stone accents, some translucent fiberglass panels allow natural light into the gymnasium, and then kind of the projected parapet as well. Here we're thinking that this building in particular may benefit having signage both facing Archwood as well as Brown Street. So we're proposing to have Kenmore Garfield located on the side of the auditorium. Here we have kind of an abstract ram detail with the mascot of Garfield and Kenmore. So we're maintaining that theme. And here's kind of the side of the media center. So I think we've got a good start on a design here. We'd like to we've kind of been focusing on the view from along Archwood, wrapping around to Brown Street. We need to next kind of develop the views as they're seen from Beardsley and North Firestone as well. I think we've got a good start.
Any questions or comments? Yes.
I'm sorry, Deborah, I need the building one with the streets, if we can have that one back. Can we talk a little bit about traffic in and out? This is something I didn't think about during JBR. Brown Street and Archwood can be a little busy, depending on the time of day. Are we working with the city of Akron as far as lights to maybe help with left-hand turns out of there, or something that helps so the traffic doesn't, that's nice and long, and the chances of it backing up look really impossible when you're looking at it from this until you actually have parents dropping off and they're trying to make a left-hand turn out onto Brown Street or out onto Archwood. Have we looked at that?
Part of the approval is to have traffic engineering take a look at these before we even get to the part where the planning commission is going to approve. This is early in the process, so a lot more eyes from the city will be looking at this, because that's one of the standard things that we've done on each of these projects. I'm not saying it's always turned out right, because if you're a resident parent, you're going to complain about, that getting in and out of that building, but this one, we really don't have much of a choice, because we didn't want to bring traffic onto Beardsley. Firestone Boulevard now is a problem. The two streets that can carry the most traffic are Archwood and Brown, and that was one of the questions we had during one of the design meetings. Are we going to need a light at Archwood and the street right across?
Right. Yeah, I wasn't sitting this close right here. So. And then we talked a little bit when we were in with the city about incorporating old pieces of the buildings. Can you share a little bit about that just publicly so that others know a little bit about what we talked about?
Yeah, I mentioned we're working on the building demolition package for the Garfield building. What we're looking at in the bid documents is to include, by alternate bid, having to salvage 6 pieces of terracotta from the existing building. There's 4 pieces on the main gym, basketball player, football player, track, and baseball. Yeah, thank you. And then there's also kind of facing Beardsley, there's the other pieces that are, one's kind of symbol for medicine and the other for music. So we're thinking we can salvage those pieces and use those tastefully within the more likely interior design of the existing building. Also, we're thinking the current Kenmore building, there is, as we come into the main entry lobby, there's a nice big piece of granite that says Kenmore on it, that we could perhaps salvage that to be able to mount that somewhere within the interior of the building.
One question that's going to come up in one of my meetings pretty soon. Athletics, football, and track. I know there's going to be a question that once they see this, do we have any areas for, or what's our plan for football, maybe track over at that school?
In the interim here, we'll use the Kenmore track and field, and then longer term is once Kent is demolished, the commission will allow us to grade the site, but we'll have to come up with that as a replacement for the field and track.
Thank you. We'll be there.
Yes.
During this process, have we ever involved students, either from the design process or given that we have a pathway that's about construction and building, are there opportunities for students to participate?
There's certainly many opportunities, and we need to, I think for our plan here, we need to engage the students some more. I know our construction manager, Hammond Construction, for like with the Elliott project that is under construction, that the construction program has been coming over periodically for tours of the building and seeing how it's all put together. I would anticipate that when we further when we're in construction here, we get great opportunities for the construction program to be engaged in the construction of the new building as well.
Do you, China, have any questions or comments from your first look at something like this?
It looks like a nice build up for Kenmore. So with like the third floors and everything, will there be an elevator that students can ride just in case,
Absolutely. There's an elevator. The building will be fully handicap accessible. There's an elevator to second and third floor.
Thank you so very much.
All right. Thank you.
And so with that, Mr. President, on the consent agenda, these recommendations are in proper form, and I move their approval.
So moved.
Properly moved and seconded. Any questions or comments further?
Just want to make a comment on item number 4. It sort of dovetails a couple of different conversations we have. The additional $71,000 from the LeBron James Family Foundation. It's an example of tweaking something that we're doing in school programs. And it also is about team teaching and giving more resources to the teachers. So just want to thank LeBron James Family Foundation for that. And just pointing out we continue to look and tweak and improve everything that we do.
Yes.
Just want to give a little extra explanation for item 7, which is the MOU with the Ohio Department of Education. Just pointing out that ODE had identified a gap in the course sequence for math within all of Ohio. This isn't just an Akron issue. And thanks to some extra work by Jenny Walls, who was our Teacher of the Year in 2017, she was invited to participate on the design team for that. So right now, the sequence is that you take algebra, geometry, then algebra 2 trig, and then either final decision-making, stats, pre-calc, or calc. So what this will do is give another course where maybe these are students that aren't quite ready to take that leap into pre-calc or calc. So this is a kind of a gap for that, but are still looking to go into college enrollment or have a college potential. So big thanks to Jenny Walls for that. And this is interesting, Ellen, so you might have to explain this a little it says the course is specifically designed to get at the why of mathematics. Do you want to go into any detail on that? Or, sorry, the English major in me is going, what?
It's called conceptual math. So
Okay.
you're not just memorizing formulas.
Oh, good.
You're getting more at the why you're constructing the math problem the way you are.
Oh, good. I always ask why.
Yeah.
Why?
Exactly.
So just to give you a little bit of extra explanation for that, and also to give a shout out to Jenny Walls for her extra work on it.
Any other questions or comments? Roll call.
Mr. Bravo?
Yes.
Mrs. Lasher?
Yes.
Mrs. Mansfield?
Yes.
Mr. Miller?
Yes.
Reverend Walker?
Yes.
Mr. Alexander?
Yes.
Mrs. Baylor?
Yes.
And finally, Mr. President, I have before me for your consideration 13 business affairs recommendations. These recommendations are in proper form, and I move their approval.
So moved. Properly seconded. Any questions or comments? Yes.
I mean, when it rains, it pours with some of the buildings, you know, and Betty Jane and the boilers, I mean, my goodness. Number 12 on the telehealth, I love this. I think it'd be great at some point to maybe have a more formal presentation on the telehealth. Telemedicine is a big thing right now, and I think it's, you know, bringing that to our students where they are already is really, really the right way to go. I think it's a great thing, so I'd love to hear more about that. And then I think we were all chatting a little bit earlier about the Helen Keller International Child Site Ohio program, reaching out to APS, just another way that, you know, anywhere we can help our students succeed. And you can't learn it if they can't see it.
I'm just glad to see that we continue with the work with Head Start. I'm a big Head Start person, and again, that's early childhood education. So to continue that work, I'm glad to see that we're doing that with Helen Arnold, Portage Path, and Robinson, CLCs. Thank you.
Any other questions, comments? Please note, we have an opportunity, a reduced rate for driver's ed, so that our students might be able to take advantage of that. We've had some problems getting students to further their education in masonry and other areas because they don't have license to drive. And it's difficult to get the internships that they need. So we're in a partnership to get a reduced rate for our students to learn how to drive. So we appreciate that, and I'm sure our students and parents will take advantage of that. Roll call?
Mrs. Lasher?
Yes.
Mrs. Mansfield?
Yes.
Mr. Miller?
Yes.
Reverend Walker?
Yes.
Mr. Alexander?
Yes.
Mrs. Baylor?
Yes.
Mr. Bravo?
Yes.
Mr. President, you know, over the last couple of weeks, we've had, you know, minus 20 degree wind chills. We've had electrical problems, water problems. I just want to give a shout out to our staff, Deb Folk, Dan Rambler. You know, when we had water issues at the I Promise School, thank Mary Kelly, and, you know, just working to get students moved to another location and, you know, get those students picked up by their parents. It's been a very difficult winter season for us with a lot of the different issues that we had. It was just cyberling with a water issue this morning, but they'll be open tomorrow.
Yes,
so out there in TV land tomorrow, the day off. But really, it does take us, you know, sometimes the call comes at 4:30 in the morning, and we have to mobilize people. Sometimes it comes in the middle of the school day, but our staff has done an excellent job of responding to these emergencies. So I'd like to say thanks to all of you.
Surely we've seen that in action. They've done an excellent job, especially mobilizing buses to get students from point A to point B. And they did an excellent job, particularly when it was cold over there at the sprinkler at I Promise School. It happened to be a very cold day, but buses arrived in a timely fashion and those things are taken care of. No presidents, well, we do want to remind us that If you noticed, there were 2 spring Northeast Ohio conferences, and the one is on our regular meeting date, and you've gotten an announcement so we'll cancel that one. But on the 21st of March in Smithville, they will have the spring conference, and we do want to take note that Mr. Alexander and Mrs. Mansfield will be honored for 10 years of service. And 2 of our schools will be honored for their academic work.
You'll be recognized for 20.
And I will be recognized for 20 years of service and an achievement award, I believe. So we are grateful for the longevity of our board and the activity that our board does. So if we can all, mobilize ourselves and be there for that to support one another, we would appreciate it. Okay, Treasurer's report.
I would like to share some good news. As the superintendent mentioned, our operations and facilities, I think we've all been stressed over these past 30 days with the weather. Last Tuesday, about 7 p.m., and talking with Deborah, we knew that this power in the building would likely be out the next day. At 6 o'clock the next morning, received the phone call from the superintendent, so we started that chain of phone calls that this building would be without power likely throughout the rest of the day. By 8:30, the payroll staff, which we all know and love, were up and running by 8:30 at the OTT building, logged into through our disaster recovery plan put in place with Howard and Deborah at OTT. And a special thanks goes out to the family at OTT for rearranging their professional development day to house us in the 2 labs. But even as important as getting payroll out, what was great about it is this was our trial run, as everybody was talking about, to 10 North Main. And we had lots of informal meetings, and they certainly helped me, and hopefully they helped those folks that we had those informal meetings. So a sign of great things to come for supporting the buildings. We made great impact on the buildings that day, and real quick, like we were able to be nimble and on our feet. So it was just I'm glad that happened to us, frankly, because it tested our systems, and we were up and running with just no break in service. So just happy to report that, and thanks to everybody at OTT, and especially the operation folks here for getting us up and running.
Thank you.
The second piece of good news, is a review of the Patterson School Funding Work Group, as you know. We started our work in November of 2017. A Republican and Democrat came together with no small task of solving school funding in Ohio. They asked 8 treasurers and 8 superintendents, and we've expanded that group. We've pulled in a few communication experts. And we've been working at least twice a month, some months many more times, for hundreds of hours, putting together a new school funding formula. Obviously, we have a new governor, we have a new speaker, we have a new minority leader from Akron. We've had access to all those people and have been so welcoming. Leader Sykes met with us on Thursday afternoon. The governor's budget folks met with us Thursday morning. This is our second meeting with them. And then just to align all those pieces, Speaker Householder put Bob Cupp and John Patterson, who have been working on this, as the co-chairs of the Education Committee. And that was pretty monumental. So the pieces are aligning. So what I really would like for you to stay tuned to is March 19th, is we have our legislative day at the State House. I know some of you have already signed up. I'd certainly like to join you in that day. That's sponsored by BASA, OASBO, and OSBA. So March 19th, I think 9 to noon. And then I would love to arrange some meetings in the afternoon with you to meet a lot of those players on the school funding work group. At a future board meeting here in the next month or so, I'd like to present to you the school funding formula. They have a couple of visitors from the school funding work group, the members from around the state. But we will be hitting the road again, going out to 5 regional state meetings that will likely be sponsored by BASA, OASBO, and OSBA. So you would be invited to those meetings to take a look at this financial model. In a word of caution, I would offer to you and to all of my colleagues, and I'm sure all of David's colleagues, is we've done this before. We've done school funding before, and there's this tendency to do policy by printout. We get our individual simulations and we look down at that final detail, just like what we do in the 5-year forecast. And we forget to look at trends and the trends that got us here and the trends that are going to give us guiding light in the future. So we've been asking at every public meeting we have to be careful about policy by printout. There'll be many different versions of this, but our values were very clear in the very beginning that ensure all students can achieve their greatest potential regardless of property district wealth, local control, and transparent in a way that every community has their ability to pay their fair share. So we've really focused on wealth and capacity of wealth to smooth out those differences. And we were in the office of one representative on Thursday where we said Summit County is the perfect place to represent this model. We have 17 school districts in Summit County. The highest effective tax rate has the highest median income, and that makes sense. That's fair and that's equitable. But the second highest effective tax rate has the lowest median income. And the longest running school district in state fiscal receivership and financial receivership is also in Summit County and has one of the lowest median income. So we have a lot of things writing on this financial model. Even if it's not adopted in its entirety, it will definitely influence the legislature. And so I want to extend thanks to you all for allowing me to work on that. But the next 30 days leading up to the governor's budget, stay tuned. It's going to be a busy time. So that concludes my report.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Sure. Committee reports, legal, contracts, and board policy committee.
No report?
Finance, capital management committee.
No report.
Instructional policy and student achievement committee.
Of course, we have a report. Well, I think it's been discussed a little earlier and then commented by Bruce, discussed earlier by Assistant Superintendent Dr. Ellen McWilliams-Woods about the United Way of Summit County. Their plan to create our family resource centers to support our APS families is now underway. Wraparound services, if you don't know what they are, I'm going to tell you. They are a strategic set of programs and services for families coordinated by an organization. In this case, with United Way, taking the pressure off of our principals and our teachers to help schools address the social and non-academic barriers to student learning. United Way has also hired a new director of education. They didn't give the name of the new director, but her job is going to be to head up the support and planning for the development of the initiative of the wraparound services and all that, helping our students and our teachers. Now, the first schools that will be pilots of this program will be, as said earlier, Helen Arnold, which is in the Bookville CLC cluster, and then Robinson, which is in the East cluster CLC. So, the staffing and resource allocations to allow for a full-time family resource specialist in each of these 2 buildings is expected to be finalized by June 2019. That's very exciting. Initial funding has been secured by Key Bank and Huntington. as usual, these are two major supporters of APS and some other initiatives that they have helped us with in the past. So if you want any additional information, you need to talk to none other than the Assistant Superintendent, Dr. Ellen McWilliams-Woods, and Ms. Carla Chapman. That's all.
Any additional comments from that committee?
No.
Nothing else, that's it? Okay, unfinished business? Any new business that come before us? We do need to meet in executive session, and according to our 21.22G1, to consider personnel matters for the purpose of considering the employment of a public employee or official of the school district, and 121.22G3, to meet with the board legal counsel to discuss disputes involving the board and or the school district that are the subject of pending or imminent court action. I need a motion to go into executive session. It's been properly moved.
Second.
And seconded. Any questions or comments? Roll call.
Mrs. Mansfield?
Yes.
Mr. Miller?
Yes.
Reverend Walker?
Yes.
Mr. Alexander?
Yes.
Mrs. Baylor?
Yes.
Mr. Bravo?
Yes.
Mrs. Lasher?
Yes.